I am here with my son Beckett, and we are in my little studio office. Beckett, what's your favorite little thing in my office to play with when you come in?
The bobblehead.
Bobblehead, Jesus. Make sure that's all the way in the frame. I think I found this at like Goodwill for 99 cents once, and I was like, I got to put that in my office just for fun. So he always likes to get that out. He said that had to make the video, so it made the video. Good work. Today, I want to ask Beckett something and ask you something. Have you ever heard of lamentations? Have you ever heard of lamentations?
No.
Have you ever heard of the word lament?
No.
Okay, so like to lament is to like passionately express grief or sorrow. So have you ever been really, really sad, and then you were like, because you were really sad, you were very passionate and like loud about how sad you were?
Yes.
Yeah? What does that look like when you do that? Give me an example.
Does it have to be true?
Does it have to be true? Yeah, that'd probably be good if it was true. I can think of some. If you've ever had like something taken away from you, like you get grounded or something, and you're upset that you lost something, that can make you loud, right?
When I lost a puppy.
Oh yeah, I remember that. That's right. When we lost Puppy, one of his favorite stuffed animals. When you lost Puppy, you were sad about that. You were crying, right? And that's kind of like lamenting. Lamenting can be like crying or being sad or being even loud while you're being sad, like mourning out loud. It's kind of the emotional way that we can be sad. So what I think is really interesting is the Bible. Sometimes people think it's just this like polished book of, all these collection of books that are kind of all polished and like make God look great, right? But there's actually this whole book of laments where there's an individual who's lamenting the situation they found themselves in, the sadness and sorrow and despair that they found themselves in, and even at times blaming God for the situation they found themselves in, which I think is like just very interesting that God doesn't just allow this to happen, but like it's like that's part of the human condition and it belongs in the Bible. And so Beckett's going to read a couple verses from chapter 3. Chapter 3, verse 7 says this.
He has walled me in so I cannot escape. He has weighed me down with chains.
Yeah, and so I mean that he that's being spoken of there is God. Like the person speaking there is blaming God for the situation they found themselves in, which I think is interesting because that is kind of our knee-jerk reaction to kind of lament and the truth is like God can handle our emotional outbursts as we grieve. And like we are in a season of collective grief right now. We are in a season of collective mourning, and it's okay to have an emotional response. It's okay to lament. It's so okay that like God even has a book in the Bible like attributed to this lamenting, to this grief. And then later on in chapter 3, like there is kind of a summation, if you will, or a way of like pointing back to who God is. Like it's interesting that along our lament, along our sorrow, usually that actually brings out in us perspective. When we do allow ourselves to lament, allow ourselves to mourn fully, it usually leads to healing. It leads to a perspective. And so in chapter 3, verse 22, here's what it says. Go ahead, bud.
Because the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail.
Yeah, and so God's love is still present, even in our lamenting, even in our mourning, even in our grief. And so today, as you mourn, as you lament, as you grieve, whatever that might be in your situation during this time, remember that God's big enough to handle that it's okay to grieve, it's okay to lament. And remember that God's compassionate love for you has not ended in all of this. Even in the midst of your grief, God's love is still there for you. God's compassion never fails. And may peace be with you today. Say peace.
Peace.